to video 12, part A. Where shall I start this story? I think I'll begin with 2 Peter 1:13. Peter referred to his own body as a tent. What a great idea! The real me, temporarily living in a physical tent. Right now, the tent that God gave me is in great shape. But even excellent tents wear out eventually. It's good to plan ahead. When my dad planned for the disposal of his old tent, his preference was to let it become ashes. He wanted to get away from this dense plane of existence as fast as he could. Mother chose the same plans for her own reasons. Me, though, I never liked the idea of cremation. Flames are too rough and quick for my taste. But to have my tent locked up in a coffin? That wasn't any better. It made me feel claustrophobic. Yes, I feared death. I like my physical tent very much. It's disease resistant, has self-repairing skin, and comes with built-in visual and auditory sensors. The energy intake system is fun to use, particularly when the power source is good cheese. Of course I don't wish to lose my tent. But if that ever happens, and I know it will, I want to respect the work that God put into making it. And well, even though my mind knows it's just an old tent, I've grown used to identifying with it. That makes the idea of burning it or locking it up feel a little bit like those things would be happening to the real me. I know I'm not that tent. I'm not just my own physical body. Still, I struggle with the idea of tent disposal. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. My problem with death goes far deeper than the disposal of my old tent. Some say that there's nothing on the other side. Of course, I don't like that idea. Others say that when we reach the other side, we meld into the God consciousness. If that's how it is, I would lose my sense of self. That's terrifying. And some people told me, believe in God and you'll go to heaven. And they spoke as if that solved everything. But for me, it didn't. I never could connect with the idea of heaven in the way others seem to. When I was a child, people described sitting on a white cloud and playing the harp. I remember thinking, I'm going to get sunburned and I'm going to be bored. When I grew older, the descriptions of heaven changed. Many people talked about looking forward to meeting Jesus in person. When I heard that, my mind went straight to logistics. Millions of people, all wanting a moment with one single person. How could there be any time for me? Here on earth, things are much better. God is in my heart, and I can talk to him and walk with him every moment of every day. No crowds, no waiting in line. He's always there with me. Nothing's better than that. So, yeah, death is unavoidable, but everything people said about it made it seem like a huge loss. I responded in the only way that made sense. As much as possible, I refused to think about it. In 2015, I got some pet ducks. Ducks are not like other pets. They're less durable. Predation, disease, accidents, many factors lead to their deaths. When I lost one, I grieved. Then I made a shallow hole in the flower bed. I added greenery and flowers at the bottom to show my care. Then I put the dead duck in, and I added dirt. I was very sad when they died, but I grew to appreciate that method of burial. And eventually, I grew jealous. I thought, when my time comes, why can't my body, my tent, be buried like a duck? A shallow spot, a bit of grass, a few flowers, and then a thin covering of dirt. That would be so much better than the other two options. I went online and I discovered something I'd never heard about before. Green burials. Oh, I like that. Maybe one day that option might grow more common. I stored the term green burial in the back of my mind for future reference. A few weeks ago, I decided to investigate that idea again. This time, I discovered that there were quite a few green burial preserves all across the nation. When I looked at online pictures, I felt such peace. I could almost feel the wind and weather moving over the land. It felt right. Then I looked at one that was in my state. One picture showed a shallow grave with grass and flowers lining the bottom. Suddenly, I felt that God was saying, look, here's a place that does duck-style burials in people-sized holes. That's what you wanted. I felt like God was making me an offer. With deep respect, he was saying, I see how you value your tent. I know you've been worried about how you'll leave it behind. When the time comes, would you like to leave it here, in this preserve? I like being here on earth with God far too much to want to leave. But if I have to leave, the part about where to leave my old tent felt right. After a day or two, I had a very practical thought. Why wait? Why not reserve a burial plot ahead of time? Suddenly I got excited. In fact, I was so excited that I wanted to share my feelings with someone. But who? Most people treat tent disposal choices as difficult and somber decisions. How could I explain that somehow I wanted to jump up and down instead? I wanted to dance and shout and sing. I didn't understand my own feelings. I didn't know where they came from. When had my discomfort turned to joy? I journaled talking with God. Oddly enough, he seemed to also think this burial plot idea was fun. How strange. Since journaling didn't dissipate all my extra emotional energy, I started researching the preserve by taking a good look at satellite photos on Google Maps. I couldn't tell the preserve apart from the land next to it, but I didn't want to wait. So in my excitement, I tried to imagine where the boundaries might be. Within those, I looked for likely places for the plots, and then in those supposed plots, I was like, okay, where might there still be a space available? I was having fun. And then based on all those wild guesses and what I could see on Google Maps, I began to make a wish list. Oh, I knew it probably wasn't very realistic. I needed to wait and see what the actual preserve looked like. Still, it was fun to imagine. On top of a hill? Nah, I didn't want to be above everyone. But with a view? Oh, I would love a view. Though why a dead body under the ground would care about the view, I had no idea. But a tree? It would be lovely to be near a tree. And what if I was near a walking path or under a walking path. Well, to have people walk on top of me all the time might not be right, and I wasn't sure they'd allow that, but near a path would still be great. I kept looking for more options. I noticed the spot at the bottom where seasonal water had cut deeply into the landscape. There'd be no view at the bottom, but what an interesting place it might be. I imagined my old bones being carried downstream in a storm. That would be so funny. Unfortunately, the state would never allow a burial in such a place. I stopped. This was supposed to be a serious topic. Was I having too much fun? Probably, but that didn't stop me. Some of my wishes were not compatible, like the view and the bottom of the wash, so I began to think about priorities. If I had to choose, which one did I want more? The view or a tree? Near a path or near the wash? I couldn't make up my mind. I started thinking about plant diversity. A plot with more plant diversity would be more interesting, and that mattered to me. But which plants were the best for tent recycling? The more I researched, the more I began to worry. How could I guarantee that there would be the right plants and the right conditions on my plot? I needed to be there to check on things. But I'd be dead. If something went wrong, would I even be able to do anything about it? Probably not. All my joy ran away. And then suddenly I realized that I have a friend who can act on both sides of death's divide. God. What if I let him handle the recycling of my tent? If something went wrong, he'd be able to handle it. I asked him, and he seemed open to the idea. But oddly enough, he didn't give me a firm answer. I figured that meant he'd continue the discussion later, when he was ready. I was eager to choose my plot. I made an appointment to visit the preserve. I was filled with excitement. Those intense feelings weren't logical. The preserve had been open for a while. Surely the best spots were already claimed. I told myself I was going there to find an average spot. The morning of my appointment, my excitement increased to a degree that made even less sense. This time my feelings were so over the top that I finally understood. The eagerness wasn't all mine. God too was excited. As excited as the proverbial cat that got the cream. And that was unusual. It was clear that he had something planned. So I wrote in my journal, God, what do you have up your sleeve? He didn't answer me. I figured he would when he wanted to. The long drive to the preserve was beautiful, with amazing scenery. But whatever God planned, it didn't happen during the drive. When I got to the preserve, the owner greeted me warmly. On our first circle of the property, I was amazed at the beauty and the peacefulness. I asked about the hills. Too rocky. What about right where the flatter grass meets the hillside? Not yet surveyed. Okay, time to reset. The second time around, I asked, okay, show me what is available. She showed me spots in the various sections. One had a pretty view, but the ground was too dry, almost no plants. Another plot was pretty, but It was last in a long line of plots, all purchased by the same family. I'd feel the odd one out if I got that one. We drove around a third time. This time we looked at meadows and trees. That was peaceful. But when I stood in the middle of the meadows, I felt lost. And near a single tree, what if something happened to that one tree? I sighed. Not one spot stood out. There had been so many moments in my life when I was told, "You're too sensitive, just deal with it." Perhaps today I was just being too difficult. So I told the director, "I don't see a spot that stands out, but the preserve is beautiful. I guess I don't need to choose a particular spot. It's peaceful here. Any of them will do." She wasn't satisfied to see me settle like that. She wanted me to find a spot that I really liked, so we circled once more. This time she pulled out her own map and studied it. And then she said, "There's one spot that I didn't show you. It's a bit separate from the others." It was right between two trees, with a beautiful view of a large field of grass. My eyes got wide. Then I turned around and my jaw dropped. We were also right next to the most amazing tree skeleton, covered with orange lichen. It looked like a sculpture. I know these skeletons can last 50 or 100 years or more, and this one was home to lizards. What a beauty! Then I looked again, and right behind that tree skeleton, there was a path, and then the hill, and it dawned on me. God went right down my list. He even added the tree skeleton as a bonus. He was so generous. I got emotional. I had tears in my eyes. This was why he'd been so excited. And then I saw something else, and laughter began to bubble inside of me, competing with the tears. The center of the plot was just a couple inches lower than the sides, and tracing that shape, the shape of that dip to other nearby areas, it was obvious. The center of this plot was in the middle of a seasonal wash. Granted, it was a very tiny wash, and maybe in the heart of a storm, it would have a quarter-inch of water in it. But it was there. My plot at the top of a slope with an amazing view was technically also at the bottom of a tiny wash of sorts. Everything on my list, every single item. I felt God laughing, delighted at having so surprised me. Wow, such extravagant kindness on his part, such generosity. I felt overwhelmed. I tried to hide my tears, but I just had to ask the director, "How is it possible that such a spot hasn't been purchased already?" She said, "Well, all the other spots here are on the other side of that tree." So I told everyone the section ended at the tree. Then she added, "I forgot there was a spot on this side. I don't know what made me think to look at the map. Must have been something you said." I chuckled. I knew perfectly well who had jogged her memory, and it wasn't me. But I began to wonder, if God took this much care to help me find a spot for the disposal of my old tent, What did that say about how he felt about the real me? That evening, I was reflecting, talking to God in my journal, and suddenly he asked me a very specific question. He said, "Given the plot that I gave you today, will you trust me to care for your tent when the time comes?" I blinked. 2 or 3 weeks ago, he had not given me a firm answer on this topic, and now he was the one asking me? But his tone was most formal. This question must be important. I needed to focus on it. The words were jarring. It almost sounded like a transaction. The plot and trade for my agreement? Nah, God wasn't like that. Had I gotten the words wrong? I tried matching what I sensed to different words. Could it have been, "You found a beautiful spot for your old tent? Will you leave it?" I was rudely interrupted by my own micromanaging side. "Leave your tent? You can't just leave your tent. You don't know what might happen after you're buried. Someone needs to be watching it." I grinned. "You're right," I answered. "I can't know what might happen, and something might. There does need to be somebody in charge." I felt a burst of joy because I knew exactly who that should be. A person whose character I trusted. Someone whose decisions I respected. One who cared about the things that mattered to me. God. He was exactly the person I needed. He would take excellent care of my old tent, far better than I could. Just look at the burial plot he found. I did not understand the first part of his question, but I didn't need to. I trusted him. So I answered, "When the time comes for me to set aside my tent, I will put its care into your hands." I even added whimsically, "Maybe a few of the atoms will benefit some of the nearby bushes and plants." And then I didn't want to overreach, so I qualified with, "I hope that will happen, but that'll be for you to figure out, not me." Then I listened. His question still lingered, as if I hadn't answered. Something about my answer had not worked, so I decided to try again. This time I focused on the exact question he gave me and on adding more details to avoid misunderstandings. So I said formally, "Given the burial plot you gave me, I make the agreement now that when I'm no longer using my tent, from that moment on, the tent will be yours and yours to care for." Then, to clarify things for myself, I added, "I will let go of the tent at that moment because it will no longer be mine. It will be yours. Then I'll focus on you and I'll follow you." Somehow he seemed satisfied with that answer. I was tired from my long day, so I slept. Early the next morning, I filled out the paperwork and the burial plot was officially mine. Then I sat in the middle of it for a while, taking in the view. I wrote down my impressions. This is what I wrote. "I'm sitting in the most delightful spot, in the shade of a juniper tree. It's so peaceful here. I stare in joy and wonder. There are so many different kinds of plants around me. Here at the bottom of the tiny wash, there are little deciduous sage bushes just beginning to leaf out. But over there, the beautiful skeleton of the long-gone juniper glows in the sun, surrounded by larger evergreen sage plants. And beyond that, there's a field of dried grass, tall and golden. So much variety. It's fascinating. I'm in awe. This is the very best of spots. And I know God brought me here, and he gave this spot to me. Then I drove home. My mind was trying to ask questions. Why was God so extravagant about a burial plot? Why did he ask me that one question so formally? Why did my answer seem so important to him? But I couldn't focus on those questions. I was still feeling too emotional about the depth of God's extravagant care for the disposal of my tent. That amount of care was hard to think about. I was bemused, filled with wonder. It was hard to focus on anything else. I was no longer worried about what would happen to my old tent after it was buried. I was confident that it would get the best of care, and that was truly huge. It didn't solve everything. What would happen to the real part of me when I left my tent behind? I didn't want to think about that. So I just focused on the amazing burial plot that God gave me, and I rejoiced. But I'm glad to say the story doesn't end here, because God wasn't done yet. In video 12b, why is God so joyful and playful? And in video 12c, what new adventure does he draw me into? Listeners, thank you for joining me for this first part of the story. It means a lot to be able to share it with you. See you in 12b.